All right, welcome everyone. My name is Rodriugez, and I'm the Director of Marketing here at the Tallgrass Film Festival. And I'm so excited to be here today with the director, cinematographer, and editor of Represent, Hillary Bachelder. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So this movie is ultra inspiring, and I want to thank you so much for making it, first off. Can you talk about why you felt like this particular story was an important one for you to tell?
Yeah, so I was the inspiration sort of came after the 2016 election, and I kind of say that the moment of genesis for it was on election day 2016, November, whatever that was. I went into my polling booth and I looked at the ballot, and it like suddenly hit me just in that moment that there was the name Hillary was on the ballot, which, obviously I was aware of before I walked into that room, but like just getting to put pen to paper and say like, I'm voting for Hillary for president, is like such a, superficial kind of form of representation. But I just like, it totally made me cry. And I just started sobbing in the voting booth, and I was like, oh my God, it's my name. So like I walked away from that moment with this just like gut feeling around representation and politics and what does that mean. And then as sort of the Women's March in early 2017, you saw just like the early ramping up to the 2018 midterms, especially among Democratic women. You saw this like huge rise in interest from all these women who'd never run for office before, but who wanted to do so. And so I was like, this feels like where I plug into this story, or like start or do the work to sort of address this question that I had after election day. And then I really quickly kind of focused down to local politics, because it felt like something, we don't get to see very much of. Local politicians don't often get the limelight. And I was really drawn into like all of it felt like so much was going to trickle down from the national level. I wanted to see how it was going to play out in these like very localized communities. And also because it felt like an opportunity that I wouldn't have with some of these higher level candidates who like really would be on their guard if a complete stranger with a camera knocked on their door and said like, please let me into your life for the next 3 years. Brandon, Maya, and Julie were so generous and so honest and so open with me. And that also just felt like I was lucky, and I had to work to build that trust with them, but I don't know that it would have been possible with someone who was running for Congress, who was running for Senate, or running for governor. So there were sort of all of these reasons that guided me to those kind of specific stories and that specific angle of this very national issue.
Yeah, I think that's a great point about it being raw and real, because it definitely felt that way. And, I wonder how you decided on Bryn and Maya and Julie when you were searching for these local candidates or more local candidates.
Yeah, so I found Maya first because she announced she was going to run for mayor of Detroit, and it made some headlines. And I'm based in Chicago, so it was easy for me to sort of pick up the phone and then drive out and go meet her. And so it was just like pretty apparent right away. I was like, oh, Maya, charismatic, passionate, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And then ended up connecting with Bryn actually sort of tangentially through this organization that was set up specifically to train women in farming and agriculture who were thinking about running for office. So I went to one of their trainings, and I just like loved the idea of a farmer lady, cool farmer lady running for office. So like that got put out into the Midwest farmer lady networks, and I was introduced to Bryn. And so I think those two pieces fell into place fairly quickly. And I was looking for a third subject, and I knew I wanted a Republican. And so I actually spent a year really reaching out and looking for who that third candidate would be, and ended up connecting with Julie through just really some local Republicans kind of in my own backyard in Chicago. But essentially when I got to that point, there was some level of, there was a bit of deliberate intentionality on my point, or on my part, to try and like, we have one suburban story, we have an urban story, we have a rural story. The three women are sort of all different demographic, racial, economic backgrounds, different age groups, different support systems, different parties. They really check a wide range of boxes. But as I sort of started talking to them and getting to know them, what really became apparent to me through their stories was that they were each women who were very like idealistic and sort of unwilling to have to shrink themselves to fit the idea of a politician in our country. You know, they were all sort of being told either by their party or their opponents or, you know, society in these different ways, like, this is what a female candidate looks like. And they were all kind of unwilling to, again, shrink themselves to have to meet that expectation. So that sort of was the thing that drew me to each of them and helped connect, I think, the sort of the backbone of their particular arcs across the film.
Mm-hmm. I wondered too, like, as a woman, as a female filmmaker, and making this story and working around women and knowing like the light that is shown on them, a little bit brighter always for women, I feel like, how much responsibility did you feel to make sure that it was a positive light, even, you know, it sounds like politically maybe being Democrat and working with a Republican, just like, you know, as a filmmaker, how was your responsibility there affected?
It's a good question. And it was something that I was very nervous about all through filming and all through editing. And I think the most I've probably sweat in recent memory was when I sat down with each of them to watch the film, because I showed each of them a cut before it was quite finished so that they could watch it and say like, oh, I hate, you know, this one thing, or you totally got this wrong. I did want to give them that opportunity because, yeah, at the end of the day, this is a film about a positive portrayal about women in politics and women taking the risk to step into this space. And the last thing I would want to do is ruin the political careers of three women who had trusted me, you know, for the cause of representing this issue. So that was it was my intention to create something that people would connect to and empathize with. But at the same time, I didn't want to make a campaign commercial. I needed to show them, you know, they're all rough around the edges. They're all figuring it out. And that was important too. I wanted them to feel real. And so, you know, it was a constant, you know, thought in my mind, and a balancing act. Again, through production, it's like, when do you put the camera down? And then when you get into the edit, like, okay, maybe that line comes out. We don't need to like make that point specifically. But in the end, you know, all three of them are really happy about it, really excited about it. And I do think people who watch the film still see them as a sort of complex, you know, fully nuanced human beings.
Definitely. I think there's also a lot of good positioning, if that's the right word. Like I'm a new mom that's working, and so it was great to see Bryn, you know, carrying her kid, like child, and bringing her newborn baby to these events. And so, you know, I guess I'm talking more about the kid part, or like the mother for both of Julie also as a mother. Like, how important was that for you to show that piece of perspective as well? Just, you know, as a representation, like seeing another mom out there.
Yeah, it was something that came up a lot when I was first kind of casting the film, and I was going to all of these trainings for women who were thinking about running, and like had just conversations with 30 or 40 different women who I kind of fell in love with all of them, but couldn't put them all in the movie. But it just was like such a constant when I was asking people like, what's your biggest hesitation, or, you know, what's your concern? And almost universally, like every mom that I talked to was like, well, I would love to run, but I think I'll do it when my kids are a little older. And I heard that when their kids were like 2 years old, when their kids were 10 years old, when their kids were 16 years, you know, it didn't matter. Every mom was like, I need a few more years. And so I knew that I wanted to cast a mom, and then I sort of lucked out and found two moms. And again, I really liked that, you know, Bryn's kids are really young, and Julie's kids are a little older, and they are different sets of challenges, but they're still, you know, they're still doing it. They're still embracing it. And so it was definitely, I'm very glad to have been able to bring that representation into the film.
Yeah, I didn't expect it to make me emotional, but it was like a different level of empowering just to see how people balance that. So you did a great job. Um,
Thank you.
Something you had mentioned a little bit ago was just being around for a lot of these women's lives. So, you definitely experienced highs and lows with them. I couldn't shake how inspiring their energy was, specifically Maya, just like she seemed to be like ready to go and just so energized, especially at her young age, even with her losses. So, did that energy and being around that, did that really inspire you, I guess, and motivate you while you were filmmaking?
It did. I think it was especially, um, I will cop to being a democratic, a progressive filmmaker. And so part of the motivation going into this was like, oh my gosh, I need to be around some like badass women for the next few years
Yeah.
to stay sane. And so that was, yeah, I find each of those women so inspiring for who they are and what they care about and the work that they do in their community. I also found so many moments just like soul crushing. Like I desperately wanted them all to win. And I think,
Yeah.
even Maya really, for the year after her second election, people have seen the film at this point, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I can start that over
That's
again.
okay. Great question.
um, so even Maya, for the year after her second election, after she loses, I was still following up with her, and we shot a couple of pickup interviews. And really, for the next year, she was really kind of down. She was really burnt out and really like cynical about having run twice and not feeling like she got the support that she had earned, I think. And yeah, it was hard for me to see that and want to want to put a film out there that ties it all up in a neat bow in the end.
Hmm.
So we did try. I like to say I feel like the ending of the film is a bit of like a note because we have a great scene with Bryn taking her daughter to the trustee convention, but Maya and Julie are two women of color from, again, two different
Hmm.
parties, both lose, and Maya isn't sure if she's going to run again. And I think it would be a huge loss to our political system to not have the Mayas and the Julies be a part of it moving forward. So, it was at times very inspiring and at times very crushing and generally very grounding, I would say, for me to be around all of them for that period of time.
Yeah, it's funny, Maya may not have won, but to work at Google and to be so young, and then also just, I think it was really heartwarming seeing the kids in her life who were like singing her song and just like
Mm-hmm.
it was very inspiring. So I hope she knows that she's definitely, shown a lot of people what's possible, and it's no small feat what she's done at her age, especially. I think you did a really good job with Julie's loss of kind of, I loved she was sitting there watching the news and kind of the juxtaposition of hearing about the pink wave, but not having been part of that wave. I don't know, and then starting the film too with the Year of the Woman. What do you make of all that, I guess, someone who's been so close to the cause and seeing women run, and hearing about these pink waves, and every year is the Year of the Woman, I feel like. So I guess just what do you
Mm-hmm.
take away from that?
What I wanted to be careful about doing is kind of putting too much on the individual women who run, because I think there's a risk in some of the media narratives around like a Year of the Woman to be
Hmm.
like, oh my gosh, these really inspiring women are going to run and then like change the world and solve the problems. Um, and there are incredible, inspiring women, but they're up against so many systemic and cultural barriers that you can't you can't separate them out from that. And when you do, it's just like a disservice to them, because if they
Hmm.
run and they lose, I'm not saying it's entirely not their fault, but it's, they're up against a lot. And I think yeah, just this very sort of tired narrative of like, oh, we've got a couple of really cool women running, so it's the Year of the Woman, and we've fixed sexism in this country.
Hmm.
It like lets all of the men in our country off the hook. It
Hmm.
lets all of the rest of us off the hook for not doing more to change the system, to support women candidates who are out there, to run for office ourselves. It's not a simple fix, and it's not going to go away in one election. So that is what I hope people do take away, is that like there's work to be done and we're the ones who kind of have to do it.
Yeah, it even paints like a pretty clear picture when you see Bryn at a convention and it's like all old men and you're just like, wow, there's so much room to grow there. I don't know. I just think it was really well positioned, and hearing about, you know, the work that goes into it. And I think she mentioned like retired men have the time to take these local roles. So it's just really puts it in perspective a little bit, like how, I don't know how much you really have to dedicate to it. My other question is just, you know, it's definitely inspiring to see this film so close to a presidential election. And it's kind of similar to the last question, but how did this movie impact your perspective on democracy in general? I know it's a big question, but what do you hope someone takes away from this film, just watching it this close to election?
I hope people really pay attention to the down ballot races in these local offices. I know it was like a really good check for me as I was working on this, and I, you know, especially with someone like Bryn, who's running for township trustee, you know, she was sort of our smallest office, and I was going around with her, and for that year, I was like so well versed in the local issues in Granville, Ohio. And then we'd get out in the community, and Granville's a very sort of educated and well-informed community. They have a college there. But even still, you'd go out in the community and there'd be people who are like, what the heck is a township trustee? Who are you? And I'd be like, no, how can you not know like this important role and this important candidate? And then I was like, oh, wait, how much do I know about, you know, the city clerk office in the city of Chicago? Like, I don't know who the candidates are. I don't know what the issues are. But it was just like a very good reminder that like I need to be paying more local attention than I do. And to find those people, find those candidates, do the research. And I do honestly think that there's room at the local level for bipartisan, you know, support. There's so many offices that you know, there's some trickle down of like, yes, you can still enact environmental change as a township trustee, but it also, I think it should just be the most qualified person for that job, you know. And so those are some of the two things that I hope folks take away going into this election, to really focus on the local candidates, the local issues in your community. And I would say, especially in that space, keep an open mind around, kind of party level politics.
Great message. Yeah, I hope that's a takeaway too. I think that's what I took from it, among other things. But yeah. So more of a fun question, I guess, is these three women are so inspiring, and it feels like they're great people to have in your orbit. Have you stayed in touch with them at all?
Yeah, totally. I'm still bugging them a lot about the film too, because the film is like coming out now and doing so much. We have our PBS broadcast in 2 weeks. So what I was doing earlier today was texting Bryn because we, for our PBS broadcast, we're doing a thing where you can sign up for like a stay-at-home watch party kit that has democracy themed recipes. So Bryn's supposed to get me her trusty old chili recipe for me to share. So I'm still checking in with them pretty regularly. And they all like, there's just so much I was embedded in their life for, that they'll text me about sort of random things. And I'm like, oh my God, that finally happened. Like, oh, that's so cool. And yeah, hopefully I can continue to be friends with these ladies for a long time, because they've all been so interesting and inspiring to me.
Yeah, I feel like the bonus of doing the documentary, I was like, how cool that she got to spend all this time with these women. So very cool. To talk about you in particular, I mean, you did so much on this film, and I just wonder, what are you doing now? Like, what does your future look like in film and your next project, stuff like that?
What a good question. At the moment, it's a tough one to answer because, I had started doing some development on projects as we were wrapping up Represent, but we were supposed to be premiering Represent in March, and everything in the world happened. So I put on hold some of my my ideas for next feature documentaries, and have been doing just some other projects in the meantime. I'm currently wrapping up an edit that's very on brand for me. It's a short about community organizers in a community in Milwaukee who are fighting against voter disenfranchisement there. And we're trying to get it out before the elections. So
oh, wow.
It's a hustle at the moment.
Yeah.
But I mean, really, I am interested in continuing to develop, my own projects. And there's so many other spaces in kind of democracy that that I would be interested in exploring. But I also just love people stories. I was so drawn to Maya and Bryn and Julie because I was like, oh, I just want to make this portrait of these three very different but fascinating women. And so that's always something that compels me to pick up a particular story, I think. And it's sort of hard to make those new personal connections in this COVID era.
For sure.
So I'm holding off for now to figure out what I can jump into safely in 2021.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
I hope so. Yeah. Well, cool. And I know you mentioned PBS. So was my question also, is what's next for Represent in general? So when is that happening?
Yeah, we have our PBS broadcast on Independent Lens on October 26th. So it'll be the week right before the election.
Yeah, wow.
Very excited. It's coming right up. But yeah, we're playing in a couple of festivals this month. And then we have that big broadcast, and we're still kind of working on the impact and outreach that we want the film to have, because in case it wasn't apparent from everything else I've said, I really care about this film being more than something people watch and go oh, cool, rah, rah, women, we think that there's work to do. There's change to make. So we're still working on how to get the film kind of used as a tool in that way, and get it in front of the right audiences to spark discussions around policy changes and things like that. So that'll be kind of the end of 2020 into 2021 for the film.
Awesome. Sorry, I kept muting myself for my baby. I don't know if you can hear that.
Just barely, but no need. Life happens.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time today. And I want to remind everyone that they can vote for Represent as part of our audience award. So thank you again, Hillary, and I look forward to seeing your next project in the future.
Thank you. This is a great conversation. Thanks so much.
No problem.